The Vietnam War and the push for US involvement was a result of the Gulf of Tonkin incident. A lie. The Iraq War famously is a result of lies. Wars in Somalia are a result of lies. The Second World War and the German invasion of Poland was a result of carefully constructed lies. That is war by media. Let us ask ourselves, of the complicit media, which is the majority of the mainstream press, what is the average death count attributed to each journalist?
Okay, that was Julian Assange from 2010. Looks like a real dangerous guy, doesn't he? I'm Randy Credico live on the fly here with a very special Assange countdown to freedom with two very special guests today, the legendary whistleblower, Daniel Ellsberg, and she won't say it, the legendary current investigative journalist, the great Stefania Maurizi. They'll be joining us in 1 minute. I'm in DC right now. Daniel is on the West Coast near Berkeley, and Stefania, I believe, is somewhere outside Rome. And our engineer and editor, Kelly Lane, is in North Carolina. So I've been in DC with this giant billboard truck for the last month, and I'll be back in New York City next week, and I'll be doing the show live from the studio. Let's just get right into it with these two great individuals who've been on the show many times before. We're going to take a quick musical break, and we'll be right back with Daniel Ellsberg and Stefania Maurizi.
Oh Badoglio, Pietro Badoglio, ingrassato dal fascio littorio, col tuo degno compare Vittorio, ci hai già rotto abbastanza i coglion. Tlas mai dit parei, tlas mai fight parei, tlas mai dit, tlas mai fight, tlas mai dit parei, tlas mai di russissi, tlas mai falu, nonno, tutto questo salvarti non può. Ti ricordi quando eri fascista e facevi il saluto romano, o dal duce stringevi la mano? Sei davvero un gran bel porcaccion. Ti ricordi l'impresa d'Etiopia e il ducato di Addis Abeba? Meritavi di prender la meba ed invece facevi.
Okay, that is a very popular Italian partisan tune from the mid 40s, I believe. Stefania will clear it up for me. I can't pronounce it, but I love that music, and so Stefania, tell me before we bring on Daniel, what was she saying there? Stefania, the woman that was singing.
Well, it is first of all, I'm honored to be.
We're going to get to that in a minute.
Daniel Ellsberg. Oh, the song is an anti-fascist song, which is against fascism. So it's harsh on fascists, basically. And when fascism ended, people was so, so there was still a strong feeling against fascists. And I can say so because my family had hard time under fascism. So I know how it was, because my grandfather was telling me how it was under fascism. I haven't forgotten how bad it was,
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. Usually I play Ciao Bella, but I figured I'd play that one today. Daniel Ellsberg, it's so good. It's been a long time since we last had you on. Stefania, I asked her to join me today, and we're going to do this informally today. Stefania has a new book coming out. I've been thinking about your book, the one called The Doomsday Machine, which is very relevant right now. And we'll talk about that later, Daniel. But I got to talk about Assange. I'm down here, and it's been a while since we spoke. Water under the bridge, and it seems to be hotter and hotter. What is your assessment of where they are right now?
I'm not aware that what things are going on here. I imagine that his lawyers are appealing. They have yet one or two avenues of appeal, including ultimately, I think, to the Court on Human Rights in Europe. But I'm not aware of the stage of that process. I had hoped that the new Australian Prime Minister would intervene with President Biden on this case. Australia's done almost nothing, less than nothing in a way, from a governmental point of view, although he now has an increasing amount of support in Australia. He is, of course, an Australian citizen. They've done nothing, I think, that I'm aware of to defend the many violations of his rights, both at the Ecuadorian embassy and since then. So people hope that this new prime minister, who had said in his campaigning that he thought, it's a weak statement, but he thought that Assange had suffered enough, something to that effect, that he'd been in trouble enough, that he should be out. And people really thought that he might intercede with Biden. And when he was pressed on that, he has not, as far as we know. When they failed to do anything publicly, his spokesperson said, well, we believe that private diplomacy is more effective. That conceivably could be true. I think there's no indication, and I doubt very much if the word Assange has passed the lips of any communication between the president, the Prime Minister of Australia, and Biden. The governments here just regard it as too great and a diminution of their bargaining relationship or their friendly relationship with the great superpower here to even mention the word of Assange. Biden, after all, had called Assange when he was vice president at a time when the administration, of which he was part, the Obama administration, their Department of Justice, had decided not to prosecute him, that it was too great and blatant an violation of our First Amendment to bring this first prosecution of a journalist. I was the first prosecution of a source. And after me, I think that was unconstitutional, the way it was processed under the Espionage Act. But after me, a couple dozen of people, sources, have been prosecuted. But Assange would be the first journalist. So the Obama administration had failed to prosecute him after considering it at length. But Biden, as vice president, had called him a high-tech terrorist, as I recall, and had clearly strongly against him, and has shown no difference from that as president now. So I'm sorry to say I don't really expect the Australian government to use up any capital with the relation with President Biden by even bringing up the subject. I hope I'm wrong about that. It's still not too late for both Australians to urge their government to take seriously Julian Assange's rights at this point. That I think is worth doing, and American people can still demand that President Biden drop this case, which he could easily do. It was Trump who brought the prosecution and a demand for extradition, and that could have been dropped by Biden as soon as he got into office, and he should have done so. But his Department of Justice person, who was a holdover from the Trump administration, renewed the extradition request, and Biden has never changed that. So the truth is that Biden is now presiding, and his Department of Justice, over a case that blatantly, in effect, rescinds the First Amendment protection of the press, freedom of the press, if there is this extradition and prosecution, just whether without even a conviction, which is likely under the current legal climate. The very prosecution is extremely cooling, as they say, to freedom of the press. So our status as a republic and a democracy would be greatly diminished.
It's almost like it's an insurrection itself, Mr. Ellsberg. It's almost like an insurrection in itself, because it is the very foundation, the First Amendment. You pull that leg off the table falls. I mean, I hate to use the term coup, but it's a coup against our democracy. I mean, I know it sounds wild and hyperbolic, but to me, that's what would happen if you take that one strong leg of that table, which is the First Amendment, and yank it out. What happens to this republic? I'll go to you, Stefania, to the same question I asked Daniel. What is your current feeling about since I last spoke to you? And by the way, Stefania is the author of the upcoming book, which has been published in Italy already. It's a bestseller there. It's called Secret Power, WikiLeaks and Its Enemies. It'll be coming out soon. And so, Stefania, you've been following, you partnered with WikiLeaks for since 2009, 2010, and you're really on top of this. So what is your feeling from your part of the world?
So, Randy, the situation is that, you have to realize that I have spent 13 years working on this case, and I have worked on all documents. And you have to realize that in these 13 years, I only met Julian Assange as a free man twice. One it was in basically in June 2010, and the other times was 27, 28 September 2010. Since 2010, I have never met Julian Assange as a free man. I met him inside, at the house arrest in Ellingham Mall. Then I met him inside the embassy. Now he's in prison. He has never known freedom again. When I explain this to my colleagues, they say, but this is happening to a Western journalist. Yes, it's happening to a Western journalist. Not happening in North Korea. It's not happening in China. So you have to realize this is happening in the Western world, in our democracies. And this is unbelievable. Randy, had I not worked on all this case from the very beginning, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. I would have thought maybe there is something mysterious, I don't know, but I know that this case is all about the publication of secret documents of U.S. government. These documents reveal torture. These documents reveal, for example, pressure on our government to grant impunity to the CIA 26 agents which kidnapped a man in Milan in the middle of the day, as if it was in Pinochet regime. And our prosecutors were brilliant. They were immediately able to nail the CIA, to convict them, to obtain a final sentence, but none of them spent 1 hour in prison. Why? Because the US government put pressure on our politics. They could not control our prosecutors. They put pressure on our politics. And we discovered this only thanks to this documentation. So this documentation is about appalling human rights violations. It is about torture. It is about war crimes, like the ones you see in Collateral Murder, for example. And he's in prison. He has never known freedom again for this, for revealing war crimes, the dirty secret of the U.S. military complex and their, allies. And he has never known freedom again. How can you accept this? I get mad. Whenever I'm invited to discuss my book, I ask to have a seat. that seat is for Julian. He should be there with me because I published the very same documents and never had any problem. I was not put in jail. I was not even questioned. I had no problem. So why I can do this? Why I was able to publish these documents, and he has never known freedom again. So this is unacceptable. Every morning I wake up, I think, what can I do? Because I have a conscience, you know. I feel involved. I was there. So I feel involved in first person. I feel, you know, I feel I have a care of duty in addition to the you know, abstract principle. You know, as a human being, I know I have known him very well. I have worked for over a decade on these documents, and I get mad because I realize we are not making any progress. You know, his extradition have been ordered at this point, so he has appealed. The appeal has been submitted, but I have no trust whatsoever in the British justice. I have no trust. Absolutely.
Well, neither do I. I mean, it seems like every step of the way, Daniel, that you know, the whole thing has been kangaroo, Kafka-esque, rigged. I mean, everything that from exposing as Stefania did the collusion between the Crown Prosecutor Services and the Swedish prosecutor, the spying, which Stefania was spied on, so was I, by the CIA, the suborning of perjured testimony from this guy Ziggy, the child molester, and you can go on and on and on, and it doesn't seem any of it has any effect on the prosecution. What is going on here? Danielle, I'm asking you that.
Yes, of course.
Look, it has been revealed in the Spanish court that Julian was subject to surveillance in the Ecuadorian embassy, which means, by the way, I would assume this applied to you, Stefania, and me when we visited Julian there. And if you passed in, as I had to do, my iPhone to them, I think it was revealed they were copying all the contents they could get at in the iPhones and everywhere else. And meanwhile, our conversation was being recorded or surveyed into Julian at the time. But this meant that they were recording his discussions with his lawyers and even his doctors. They had, by the way, surveillance in his bathroom, the bathroom that he had access to, in case he retreated to that, as he did sometimes, I think, for greater privacy to talk to people. And all of this was being relayed to the CIA. And the idea that he can get a fair trial after this much surveillance of his discussions with lawyers is absurd. They also discuss kidnapping him and possibly poisoning him. Now, this is exactly like the revelation of crimes against me by the White House when I was on trial, for which, when they were revealed, that was the critical elements in my case being dismissed. My 12 felony counts that added up to a possible 115 years. And by the way, there's been inflation here on the same charges. Julian now faces 175 years. But my charges were dismissed on the revelation of these crimes against me, which, as the judge said, offend a sense of justice. And Randy, as you were saying, all these things against Julian go far beyond just offending a sense of justice. They're criminal.
Yeah.
And and when you say it's like a coup, well, all people who have served the United States in the military or in Congress or in the executive all take an oath to protect, defend, to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And I would say the people who are thus moving again to rescind the First Amendment of the Constitution against freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom of religion, freedom of association. All these things are acting as enemies. I don't want to say, to use a phrase now that Trump is making really terrible. He called our president now, just last week, an enemy of the state. And that was a Stalinist term that I think was actually picked up from Stalin by Nazi Germany, enemies of the state. So I'm not going to say enemy of the state, but I am saying that in the sense of enemies of the U.S. Constitution, these people are actually acting in that mode.
Well, it wasn't just Trump is the first one to do it. So it's Trump, and Biden is also, violating the Constitution, ripping down the Bill of Rights. I mean, the founding fathers are like spinning in their graves. To be honest with you, that First Amendment that Jefferson wrote, and I got problems with Jefferson. I have problems with all the founding fathers, but that really was that First Amendment really is the bedrock, and it's threatened right now. So we are all threatened. Maybe assembly's next, maybe religion. I don't know. Stefania, I want to go back because you mentioned collateral murder, and I play this now on every single one of my shows. Kelly's got it all queued up there. And let's talk on the other side of this, both of you, because this is always gut-wrenching to me. This is a pastiche from the collateral murder video.
Bushmaster Crazy Horse, we have individuals going to the scene, looks like possibly picking up bodies and weapons.
Let me engage you.
Hey, we need to stop that. We get down there. We need to stop that. You see my little...
Roger. Break. Crazy Horse 1-8, request permission to engage.
I'm picking up the wounded. Yeah, we're trying to get permission to engage. Come on, let us shoot.
Bushmaster Crazy Horse 1-8.
We're taking him.
Bushmaster Crazy Horse 1-8.
This is Bushmaster 7, go ahead.
Roger, we have a black SUV or bongo truck picking up the bodies. Request permission to engage.
Bushmaster 7, Roger. This is Bushmaster 7, Roger, engage.
1-8, engage. Clear.
Come on. Oh yeah, look at that, right through the windshield.
Oh, I'm going to go to you first, Stefania, because I always have the same visceral reaction. It's so reprehensible, I can't even put it in words. What is your visceral response when you see that and knowing that the guys in that helicopter are still at large in the U.S. and the guy who put that on WikiLeaks is in prison now in a dungeon 24 hours a day for the last 3.5 years?
Yeah, that's whenever I'm asked to explain this case, whenever I'm invited as a journalist to explain this case, I always tell the same thing, and they say, look, this case is very easy. Don't think it's a complicated matter. You need to know very complicated laws. No, this case is very easy. This case is about a journalist and a media organization which reveal war crimes like the ones you can see in Collateral Murder and never known freedom again. Whereas the criminals, the war criminals, never spent a day in prison. So everyone can understand this is unacceptable. This is something we cannot accept. This goes to the core of our democracy. In a democracy, it must be possible to reveal war crimes. It must be possible to reveal torture and to be free and to be safe. In a regime, you cannot do it. They kill you. In a regime, they put in prison for life. But in a democracy, it must be possible. So we must win this case because this goes to the heart of what a democracy is. In a democracy, it must be possible to reveal war crimes and be free,
And Daniel, go ahead. Your visceral response every time you see
that. I had several responses. Remember that what we were seeing there now was very clearly a war crime by United States helicopter gunners of the sort that is being charged against Russians right now, and probably from the reporting we've seen, correctly charged in some respects. We don't know the scale, but it's the same. The chance that Americans would be brought before the prosecuted for that. After all, let's say one of the effects of what Chelsea Manning brought out through Assange was that there was no effort whatever to prosecute people for crimes which were clearly recorded in the cables of which she was describing in Iraq. And that meant that the Iraqi parliament could not take seriously the provisions of the status of force agreement in Iraq that said that U.S. personnel would be subject to prosecution if they committed war crimes. And for that reason, the parliament could not okay to remain. It has been asking for U.S. to leave for a long time now, right now. Going back, I mentioned two responses I had. First of all, as a former platoon leader, company commander, rifle company commander in an infantry battalion, 3rd Battalion, 2nd Marines in the Marine Corps, I had at one point been assistant operations officer in charge of training for the battalion. And in the course of that, of course, we gave training in the laws of war. Not a whole lot of it, actually, in the course of things, but enough to clearly define that shooting on unarmed civilians, which in that case clearly included a couple of Reuters journalists, so they didn't know that, was a war crime. Not every killing in war is murder, unless you're an absolute pacifist, which I clearly was not. I've been in the Marine Corps. I would say right now that Ukrainians firing on Russian aggressors are not committing murder in doing so on these Russian soldiers that are over there. But a lot of, or an increasing amount proportionally, is murder. And the killing of civilians, the deliberate killing, as in the case, was appropriately called by WikiLeaks collateral murder. And he was criticized at that time for over-dramatizing, using the word murder against collateral damage, which the Air Force prefers to call its mass murder of civilians when it engages in it.
Do you think that was an isolated case, what we saw there?
No, as two people who did protest at this time afterwards, one was on the ground, American soldier, honoring with credit the American military, in effect, by saying, he was on the ground at the time, said that he attempted to rescue one of the children who was in a car that was fired on by those people, and was told actually to stop by his lieutenant on that. It wasn't his business. That's not what we're here for. He protested that long after he got out of the military, and another person who had been a member of the helicopter squadron that did the firing, wasn't involved that day, said that's an everyday occurrence. And I've forgotten their names at this moment, but they very much deserve to be honored, those two who described that. So there's no question that what Chelsea Manning and Julian Assange were revealing was the true nature of what was being done in their name. And the public definitely deserved to know that. I'll tell you one other thing, though, in my reaction, which, as I say, partly was I was watching murder being done. But the other aspect was, I happened to be, I've rarely mentioned this, as far as I know, I was one of the first persons asked to be on a board of advisors to WikiLeaks. I got a message, an email, describing WikiLeaks. We're going to put out this stuff and encrypt it all. We'll be able to get classified material. At that time, by the way, for a long time after, there was no U.S. material in that. They had from a number of other countries. And I thought, this is ridiculous. I mean, you can't do that. NSA will stop them. So either they're trying to entrap me and others in this obvious entrapment operation to get people to try to commit secrets, or this guy is entirely naive. It's crazy to think you can get past NSA, National Security Agency, on this. But I didn't say nothing. I actually sent back and said, send me more information about it. Let's hear more about this. And I didn't get anything back, it so happens. Well, when I saw that collateral murder on television, I thought, okay, he's done it. I have no doubt that NSA did not collaborate in this regard, and he is able to do it apparently. So I did respond favorably after that to overtures from them, and I came to London later to help him reveal the Iraq war logs. And at that time, that's when as Stefania said, that's the last time I saw him. I spent several days there. The last time I saw him as a free man. I did visit him in prison, in the Ecuadorian prison luncheon, and saw a great deterioration on the second time physically.
Well, I got to tell you, I visited him 3 times in 2017, and that's where I met Stefania there when she had her lawsuit in August and in November of 2017, and when we both have video of ourselves in the Spanish court, and but I really liked him. He has a great sense of humor. I mean, it makes me so upset, as Stefania said, that she gets upset. That's not really the right word. I get angry that this guy that we saw at the very top of the show, this gentleman, this humanist, this guy with a great sense of humor, a man that loves peace, hates war, is sitting because of that creed and because of his beliefs and his pacifism, is sitting in that jail cell. That's why 24 hours a day, I wake up in the morning saying, what do I have to complain about? I got to do something. I don't know what I can do. I keep trying every single day. I don't know what to do. But that's not where I was leading. The type of person that the time that you were around him, Daniel, then I'll ask Stefania to expand on it. What kind of impression did he make on you personally?
Well, I've been saying all this time now, what does it go back to 2010, 12 years ago, that contrary to the impression given in even in the movies that have been made, referring to him and whatnot, he's a very likable person, even a lovable person. People do love him, and I can easily understand that. Hold on just a minute. Hi, I'm involved in this right now. Talk to you later. I have to turn this out. I like him very much.
On the fly.
I admire him as a whistleblower. I have my wife come. I admire him. He's not a whistleblower in the technical sense. He's an enabler of whistleblowers. He's a publisher of whistleblowers like Chelsea Manning or sources like myself. But it is now clear already, even before his actual prosecution, just from his indictment and persecution now, that journalists are taking risks comparable to those of the sources earlier. And that's a first here now, and Biden's confirmation of that comes first. Maybe I'll just say, I like him. I feel very bad, like as Stefania, we wake up in a beautiful day here. He went years and years without seeing the sunlight that I'm looking at right now, and except through a window, but I can step out into it, and he couldn't. So I feel very bad about what he has been enduring and what amounts to solitary confinement in the prison for a long time. And it's just hard to live with the sense of what this man has had to go through.
And Stefania, you know him better than as well as anybody. And so tell us your impression.
I know him very well, actually, because as I said, I spent over a decade working on the documents and partnering with him, meeting him many, many times. So I think I know him as a person. He's completely different from the person who has been described by the press. The press has completely, the media have completely demonized him. I'm not saying he's perfect. I'm not saying I agree on whatever he does and whatever he has said over the last decade. I'm not saying this. I'm saying he's completely different. He's a sweet person. People think he's not sweet. People think he's not likable. Absolutely. He's a person who cares. He's a person who is super smart, and this is impressed me. He's super smart and very, very courageous. And his courage had impressed me from the very beginning is moral courage. I remember the first time I was impressed by his courage. It was 2008. Haven't met him at that time because I met him. I started working on his document in 2009 before Collateral Murder. So he had published with his organization WikiLeaks the Guantanamo Standard Operating Procedure, and the Pentagon had immediately asked to remove the document from their website because it was not authorized. So I was impressed because WikiLeaks told the Pentagon, we want to remove it. And you know, Randy, I have worked as a journalist for the last 21 years. I have never heard of a media organization saying no to the Pentagon, never known in my life. So I was deeply impressed by his moral courage. Moral courage is something which impressed me, and I can say he's a courageous person, super smart, and he could have spent, you know, his talent, because he's a talented person, to make money, to make, you know, to create a software house, to create software company specialized in software and make money. And he didn't. He invested his best years of his life to reveal war crimes, to reveal crucial information in the public interest. This impressed me, still impressed me. He could have spent his talent to make money, you know?
Yes. You know, speaking of someone courageous, I'm going to go back 51 years ago, I believe. 51 years ago. A little short video that we played a long time ago. By the way, the name of the guy is Ethan McCord that you were trying to remember that. Ethan McCord. Kelly brought that to my attention. I'm going back and forth with her, texting. And so she's got one lined up here that she found. This goes back to, I think, 1972. Here's a very courageous man. Now watch this, Stefania.
Yeah. We won't stop the killing. Every week of this trial, like every week of the past 7 years, will be measured by new Hiroshimas and by new lies, by the deaths and imprisonment of Americans, and by tens of thousands of new Indo-Chinese killed, wounded, or made homeless. We won't stop that. But this trial will inform the American public in ways that it's never heard before of how we've been governed in the past quarter century and what censorship and deception do to a democracy.
Wow. Stefania, I know that Daniel is a hero of both of us. Your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. I mean, I always say I'm very critical about the U.S., but as far as the U.S. will produce people like Daniel Ellsberg, I will admire that kind of America. This is the America I admire. The America which produced Daniel Ellsberg, which produced Chelsea Manning, which produced Edward Snowden, which produced Daniel Hale, which produced Reality Winner, all these people. I mean, I admire this kind of America, the America which has the moral courage. And the moral courage is something really special, something which absolutely, I'm telling this especially because I live in Italy, and in Italy there is the code of silence. We are infamous for the code of silence, you know. That's why the mafia is strong here, is a culture, is a kind of culture. So I admire the moral courage. And as a journalist, whenever I find sources, whistleblowers, I give all myself to protect them, really to protect them. You know,
Daniel, she mentioned Chelsea Manning, and I threw in Thomas Drake and John Kiriakou, and she mentioned Daniel Hale and others, whistleblowers. There's a small club. You seem to have some kind of camaraderie with all of them. It's a small group that have done this, but you seem there's something that's part of this very rarefied club. Tell me about it.
Both Chelsea Manning and Ed Snowden and Julian Assange, a little less Snowden, had the privilege that I did of very, very unfavorable columns about them in the New York Times, which we had given a lot of information to. And I had warned Julian, actually, that it was no use his being quite as enraged by this, since he had given so much to the New York Times. I said I was treated exactly the same way by the New York Times. But and I think that a lot of reporters, I really have the feeling, regard their sources in general the way police regard their criminal informants.
Yeah.
Very valuable, very important to their careers, but they're snitches. They are betrayers. They're criminals, and to be used, basically, and with no real regard for them. Well, in my case, when it comes to whistleblowers, I have people who don't just inform to the police, but who tell the public at the cost, risk to their own lives. I have made a point of trying to meet all of them that I read about, and have done so in many cases. And in every case that I found, I'm very impressed by and feel very friendly. I seek them out in part to share my feelings and the experience that I've had with them, because, of course, these people, unlike Julian, by the way, had specifically gone through the same arc of experience I had, of naivete about the authorities we were serving for some time, and then disillusion and a willingness to change our career, risk our career. And so I feel a great deal of identity with a lot of them. Now, they're all going to be stigmatized by the people they have exposed from their culpability, usually as being totally self-dramatizing egotists of various kinds, and doing it for motives that did not exist, actually, fame or something like that. It's not a very good way to get famous. So most of these, I'm the one who got away when it comes to not going to prison, because the news of the crimes against me, same as against Julian, by the way, came out during my trial. And that was kind of a miracle at the time. It got me off. These others have paid much more. But, we all have, as I say, we're talking now about somebody, this is very unusual for me. We've all met him. And I think I can speak for Stefania, having, as Randy has said himself, like him. Am I wrong, Stefania, that you found him, that you like Julian Assange or not?
Sorry, I haven't understood what you said. Could you please say that again?
Like Julian
Maybe
Assange.
as a working journalist here, you may not be anxious to say that. But the point is, what his presentation in film and in papers has been of a very unlikable guy. Now, I had no experience of that with him in London or in the Ecuadorian embassy. Fine, as Randy says, very funny, super smart. I liked him totally. Now, I read other people's experience that they've had with him. It doesn't persuade me, for instance, that I would want to work for him very much, to have him as a boss, as well, in terms of control, and so forth. And as I've said to people for years, Julian Assange is not a perfect person, unlike you or me. And he has, in fact, I read once, and I didn't experience this with him, but from reading his experience with other people, a lot of people don't like him, and some of them have some reasons, significant reasons for that. He said once in an interview, "I may have a touch of Asperger's." That's on the spectrum of autism, where Greta Thunberg, a great hero of mine, has really strong Asperger's. She's an Asperger. And she's a poster child for Asperger's, actually, if only we had more like her. Well, in that sense, when I read Julian saying, "I have a touch of Asperger's," I was thinking, he has a lot more than a touch.
Well, you know, I find him, you know, a very charming.
So that's Julian, but he not only is brilliant, like Snowden in Chelsea, as far as I know.
Yep.
But you know, really unusual in that respect. But is actually, but in sense of courage, something they share, and moral courage, willingness to risk ostracism, willingness to risk the good opinion of the public or large parts of the public. And Daniel Hale, I'm extremely impressed by, who's in prison right now and should not be, absolutely
amazing.
Should be out. And these people are actually, to me, very impressive. It's not only what they've done. When I've had the chance to know them, they're very impressive as human beings.
All right, I got to jump in here because you're right. Because soon I'm going to be going to Alexandria in front of that courthouse there, where he is. If he's extradited, he will be tried in the Eastern District of Virginia. And this guy, I spoke to a prosecutor today, a former prosecutor, you know, who said that Gordon Kromberg, everybody dislikes him, and nobody has within the ranks of the U.S. Attorney's Office. Nobody likes him, and they go like this. I don't want to mention the guy's name, but and so that's where he would go. And they're going through all of this legal process with Julian Assange, which it gives me, because I always play the collateral murder, and I try to play this all the time, particularly this week. On Monday was the anniversary of Bill Kunstler's death, who was kind of like my godfather. And I played this, I think, before Daniel. And we look at all of these trials, whether it be Sterling, whether it be Kiriakou, or whoever has to plead out. They have a trial, they have the legal process, and then they're convicted, or they plea out, and Hale had to plea out, but they can't win. But they give you, and this is what
Randy, even before you show that, what you're saying reminds me, I didn't mention, I have met, admire, and like very much Sterling, who spent years in jail, John Kiriakou, Tom Drake, who's all these people are very admirable people.
They are. Let's just play this tape, and I want your thoughts on the other side, what Bill Kunstler is trying to convey, because it is the anniversary this week, and I was up there at his memorial where he's buried on Sunday and Monday with his wife and children, grandchildren. Let's just play this, Kelly. I do it all the time.
And that's the terrible myth of organized society, that everything that's done through the established system is legal. And that word has a powerful psychological impact. It makes people believe that there is an order to life and an order to a system, and that a person that goes through this order and is convicted has gotten all that is due him. And therefore society can turn its conscience off and look to other things and other times. And that's the terrible thing about these past trials, is that they have this aura of legitimacy, this aura of legality. I suspect that better men than the world has known, and more of them, have gone to their death through a legal system than through all the illegalities in the history of man. 6 million people in Europe during the Third Reich, legal. Sacco Vanzetti, quite legal. The Haymarket defendants, legal. The hundreds of rape trials throughout the South, where black men were condemned to death, all legal. Jesus, legal. Socrates, legal. And that is the kaleidoscopic nature of what we live through here and in other places. Because all tyrants learn that it is far better to do this thing through some semblance of legality than to do it without that pretense.
Okay.
It's beautiful.
We're at the Tabard Inn, but I want to mention the Tabard Inn, where it's kind of like Assange Central here in this great establishment. Fritzie Cohen's the owner. That's given us this great space here. Daniel, what is Bill Kunstler? What do you glean out of that?
Well, I can't help thinking that the last time I saw Kunstler reminds me of course. What he says is very accurate, of course. But was actually on May 3rd, 1972, when he was a key figure in a rally we were holding against the war on the steps of the Capitol. And in the crowd, when I saw him the night before the rally, and at the rally, and in that crowd were 12 Cuban Americans who had been brought up from Miami, all of them former assets of the CIA in the Bay of Pigs, operation, the aggression against Cuba that John F. Kennedy committed, having inherited the planning from Eisenhower. Okay, so these people had all been, several of them were involved in attempting to assassinate Castro. And in a way, that's why I'm here, because their mission that day was to incapacitate Daniel Ellsberg. Oh, I really mentioned this, I happen to know it, and Bill Kunstler.
Are you serious?
I have to admit, I really mentioned that, but they showed him pictures of two people, Daniel Ellsberg and Bill Kunstler. They're former CIA Howard Hunt leader and former FBI Gordon Liddy, both involved in Watergate, of course, shortly thereafter. And they were there to incapacitate me totally, and I'm not sure if they had the same order, but they were to beat up Kunstler as well. And it was actually, that was one of the crimes that led to the dropping dismissal of my charges. And it's a complicated story why they actually didn't carry out that incapacitation. But it was related to the fact, as I said, my assassins were the same people spent against Castro. And that is partial, and that's not just a joke. They really were klutzes in a way. They didn't kill Castro either, obviously. And they were caught in the Watergate a few weeks later, having reconnoitered it the night that Kunstler and I were targeted, of May 3rd. They didn't succeed in that, and they were shown their next target, the Watergate, that night. So anyway, I can't...
wow, that's amazing. I did not know that. Is there a video of that anywhere?
What?
Is there a video of that May 3rd?
There probably is. People have looked at it. Of course, there were a lot of cameras there that day.
Yeah.
And there's more to that day. It was fun. I've never seen, it was reported, the next day that there were, I even had a tape of that Judy Collins, who was singing that day, had a tape that she turned over to us of what I was saying. She recorded it on her recorder, and you could hear people yelling, "Traidor, traidor," traitor, the Cubans. And they had thought, they had been told that we were attempting to interfere with the funeral of J. Edgar Hoover, whose body, he had died that previous day. His body was lying in state in the Capitol. And his catafalque. So when they were brought up from Miami, the rationale, the cover story they were given for why I needed to be incapacitated was that I, and I guess Kunstler, were leading an attempt to violate his catafalque, to assault him. Now, of course, he was meanwhile being guarded in the not by the 82nd Airborne, but by the Capitol Police or somebody in the Secret Service. But and actually, when I heard he was going to be lying in the Capitol, I said to a person who was working with Kunstler, shouldn't we call this off? And they said, no problem. That's on the other side. The crowd attending him is on the other side of the Capitol. No interference. Will be on the different side. So we went ahead. So when Martinez, Eugenio Martinez, who died this year, one of the later plumbers, one had been one of the plumbers, and under Gordon Liddy and Hunt to neutralize me, Martinez had gone into my previous psychoanalyst office, Dr. Lewis Fielding's office, to try to get information to blackmail me with. But he'd also done 300 trips, covert trips for the CIA into Cuba, and in connection with the attempts to overthrow the Castro regime. So he came to, we learned later from the special prosecutor, he came up to Bernie Barker, Macho Barker, and said, "Bernie, this crowd doesn't like it." They thought I was in a crowd of Hoover mourners, and all they had to do then was to throw a punch at me, and the crowd would help tear me to pieces. But what was strange was that when they called me traidor, he said, "The crowd doesn't like it. There's something fishy about this." This was in Spanish. And he said they felt they were being set up as patsies. As one of them said, like Oswald, for whatever that is. That's, by the way, what Oswald had said, "I'm a patsy." And killing of Castro. So they decided to throw the operation, and they got into fights. A guy named Sturgis, who'd been involved in assassination plots, not only against Castro, but at that very same time for the Nixon government, against Trujillo. Trujillo, in Panama. So they were at that very time in a plot to assassinate Torrijos in Panama.
Torrijos, yes.
In other words, these were assassins. I think I'd have to say, I guess Torrijos was a little safer than he might have been too, because these are the guys set out to get him. But anyway, I'm going on. You mentioned Kunstler, and at the end of our trial, Kunstler was involved during that trial in the Wounded Knee case, as I remember, of Native Americans.
Hey, Daniel, can you hold it right there? Because I got to say goodbye to the folks in New York. I want you to continue that. I'm going to say goodbye to the folks in New York. Stefania and I have questions for you afterwards. I want you to finish that story.
Sorry, go ahead.
A little break, and I want to talk about
memories you bring back.
I want to talk about this doomsday machine. We're going to a quick 30-second break. Goodbye, New York, and we'll be right back with my two special guests, Daniel Ellsberg and Stefania Maurizi. Okay, that was Dmitry Shostakovich. He may be banned his music in this country any day now. You know, who knows with all the fear that's going on here. We are talking. I'm Randy Critical. This is Randy Critical Live on the Fly, Assange Countdown to Freedom. My two special guests just finished that story, Daniel Ellsberg and Stefania Maurizi. Finished that story about Kunstler.
Okay, and of course, Shostakovich, he was banned in his own country for a while. Remember, he got in bad. For periods, he was liked by Stalin, then said the wrong thing or something.
They played his symphony, by the way, during the siege of Leningrad. You know, it was unveiled, the Seventh Symphony, during the middle of the siege. Guys were there with suits that were too big on them, way too big. But that's for another time. Go ahead. So that's
okay. No, I was just saying on Kunstler, this is my best memory. I could be wrong, but our case was the first that was actually dismissed. I don't know how many there have been ever since, but it was the first where the charges were dismissed just before they went to the jury. Usually you find out these government crimes long after, while people are in prison, what's happened. So the day that our charges were dismissed for governmental misconduct and crimes, we sent off our briefs on that subject to the Kunstler trial, which was of the, as I remember, it might have been another trial, frankly, that he was conducting, but we sent it off to a Kunstler trial, which then was the second case. They used our briefs, and very shortly, several charges were dropped for government misconduct in the trial he was conducting. Right. And of course, he was a lifelong advocate of First Amendment and of our protections, such as they are. He worked a lot for freedom, and he was generally on the left, which was, as far as I know, the right place to be in all of his cases.
Okay. He was Daniel. I mean, there's so many. The Berrigans. I mean, he did so many. The Chicago 7. You know, Attica. There's a great documentary, and by the way, that's the closing scene on the documentary called "Disturbing the Universe." That little clip of him by his two talented daughters, Emily and Sarah Kunstler. They made a great documentary. I'm going to send you that documentary, okay? Because you have to watch it. Stefania, let's go back to you saw that piece by Bill Kunstler. You're friends with his wife, and I'm friends with his wife, his widow, Margaret. So what you look at that, is that the way you see all of these trials, particularly right now with Julian, what's going on, this bogus legal thing that he's being afforded, the legal process in London, now in the US, if he's extradited?
Well, he has no chance to get a fair trial, no chance at all. There is no, absolutely. I mean, you realize they got access, in addition to the fact that you have no chance to have a fair trial under the Espionage Act, because you have no public interest defense. So how can you defend yourself? I mean, I have colleagues which went through trials for reporting. One of my colleagues, for example, was undercover, and he went to a refugee center. He provided a false identity, and he was put on trial for providing a false identity. But he won the case because he could argue a public interest. He could say, yes, I have violated the law, but I did it for a public interest. Because, I mean, the public had the right to know what happened inside the refugee center, the detention center for refugees. But in this case, with the Espionage Act, you have no public interest. So on the one hand, you have no public interest. On the other hand, we know that the US military and military complex want him dead. They hate him. They absolutely want him dead. They want to set an example. They want to create a very an intimidation for all of us, so that the next journalist get collateral murder, he won't publish it. He will think twice, maybe 3 times, 10 times, and at the end of the day, he will say, I don't want to publish. I don't want to end up in an embassy. I don't want to end up in prison for life. So they want to intimidate all of us, both the sources and the journalists as well, because you can have the best revelation in the world, but if you don't have a journalist who is willing, who had the courage to publish, those revelations remain unrevealed. So they want to intimidate all of us, and so they hate him. They want to kill him. They want revenge. And then we have these.
I'm saying though.
Let me finish. Okay. Then you have these espionage operation inside the embassy, where the CIA, allegedly the UC Global, the Spanish company, got access to his legal materials, so they know his legal strategy. How can he get a fair trial when you have the CIA which knows his legal strategy? So he has no chance whatsoever to get any justice. So when I get people saying, well, he will be put under trial in a democracy, why you are so upset? There is no chance to have a fair trial.
I agree, Daniel. Then he can't get a fair. I mean, why is an Australian citizen? I mean, the Espionage Act was used to suppress dissent during World War I by Wilson and put people like Debs away and Schenck away, even Victor Berger away, anyone that was, because there was a lot of isolationist feeling back then. People did not want to join into the trenches, that trench warfare, and Wilson didn't want anyone to say how bad it was. So there was no spies that were caught back in 1917, 1918, and no foreign journalist was pinched for it. Why is a foreign journalist from Australia, an award-winning, multi-award-winning journalist who's never published anything that was incorrect or he had to recant, how is he being charged under the Espionage Act? I don't understand it.
As Stefania had said, and by the way, I just reread, Stefania, your part of the book, which is a terrific book on the Assange case and on the secrecy issue altogether. Very well researched and very accurate, very unusual. What I've read, I haven't seen any inaccuracies in that. And but as she said, the Espionage Act, under which I was the first to be prosecuted for giving secrets to Americans, to the public, has no provision for, because spies are not generally regarded as needing a public interest defense, because if they're giving information secretly to a foreign government, especially one at war, an enemy, your reasons for doing that don't usually weigh very well with the public. So they're not missing too much not to have that defense. But to use that act, a strict liability act in which you're not allowed to say anything about your motive or your intentions in front of the jury, and what the impact may have been, what we were trying to achieve, what the benefit may have been that you were seeking to the public and to the country. You can't say any of that or bring any testimony on it. So obviously, you can't get a fair trial. And none of the people who have been tried under this, the couple dozen since my case, have not had a fair trial. None of them. And we mentioned a number here, Tom Drake and Jeffrey Sterling, many others, Daniel Hale. So, who, by the way, is a relative of Nathan Hale, the Washington spy for the British, to the British, who was hanged by the British for being a spy in the Revolutionary War, and who famously said, "I regret I have but one life to give for my country." And I remember once speaking at Yale, where he was a Yale graduate. He has a statue of Nathan Hale outside where I was speaking, and it reminded me to say, I'm the second American to be tried for giving secrets to in this country, like Nathan Hale. 2 Americans, second one to be tried for giving secrets to Americans. Okay, you can't be tried under that fairly. Now, that doesn't mean that to say, here's why I did it, here's what I hoped for, here's the impact, that you're open to the trial's over, you're acquitted. The jury doesn't have to agree with you that this justified what you did, but at least you have a chance to let them know what was at stake here. Now, let me apply this to an immediate case right now that is dominating the news, as a matter of fact. Donald Trump has been found to have violated not only the regulations, but in the eyes of the Justice Department, he's committed the same offense for which we were all prosecuted, holding classified documents, among other things. By the way, I wasn't tried for distributing them. That was going to be a second trial later for distributing them. I was tried for holding them, copying them, and holding them. Exactly what Donald Trump is facing right now. So, should Donald Trump, in my eyes, has committed, many, many offenses, every kind you can name, practically. Should he be tried under the Espionage Act simply because he has top secret documents? People say, top secret? Wow. Well, remember, every page I put out in the Pentagon Papers was top secret. There were 7,000 of those pages. He also had secret documents. Chelsea Manning's documents were only secret, but he has top secret. He also has higher than top secret sensitive information, about communications intelligence, overhearing by some hand. My reaction has to be whether he should have them depends on why he has them, which we don't have a clue. I would love to hear him tell a jury why he was holding them and what they were. None of us know. It would be kind of interesting. Whether it would actually justify him in the sense of the jury, I suspect not. That he doesn't have a good reason, but we don't know yet. I have to say, everything that Ed Snowden put out was sensitive compartmented information. It was communications intelligence revealing crimes by the National Security Agency. They were listening without a warrant to every American and most everybody else in the world. And that information needed putting out. Should he have been tried for revealing crimes? Well, he's indicted for it, just like Julian Assange, who was revealing crimes. He wasn't even an American, and Chelsea Manning, who gave him the information. So I have to say, just to be fair about this, no, Donald Trump should not face trial under the current Espionage Act. For that, he can't get a fair trial. Granted, he may have no good reason, but he can't even make up a reason, which he certainly would, and argue it to the jury on this. So try him for something else. But the Espionage Act absolutely needs to be either we can live in the First Amendment with an Espionage Act, but not this one, because it is too broad, it is too vague. It applies in its sense not only to the sources, in the wording of it, it applies to journalists, which it should not do in this country. And it applies even to readers of the information who are not authorized to read it. So it's absurd. Rashida Tlaib has a very good modification, number of amendments, and she followed on Tulsi Gabbard had a before she left Congress, had a good act. Rashida Tlaib now has a very good act of amendments, a resolution of amendments to the Espionage Act, which would allow someone to argue public interest and that they were revealing crimes or what their motives were, which cannot currently be done. And to finish off, not to be too misleading about Donald Trump, what I'm saying is I have to say that the seriousness of what he has done, which may be grave, actually, can't be known just by the markings on those documents. Really, when I hear people going, oh, it's top secret, it's SCI, that tells us almost nothing about whether it actually needed protection at this time. I put out last year information that was top secret about 50 years old or more than 50, about our Eisenhower's readiness to go to nuclear war over Taiwan and the Comoros. I thought it was very relevant to what's happening right now, that we should know how long we've had a policy of threatening nuclear war to protect Taiwan from China. And what could be more relevant? It is still classified. And I said, okay, let's fight this case if you want to, but I haven't heard from the Justice Department yet. I didn't put it out for that reason. Put it out because I thought it needed to be out. Well, has Trump kept this stuff because he needed to tell the public? I doubt that. We certainly have no evidence of it. He hasn't told it. What else could it be? Well, want to blackmail somebody? Did he want to, with this information? Did he want to sell it? Isn't that even to raise the possibility would seem a terrible calumny, but about Donald Trump? No, I think not. But I don't know why he has that stuff. I just repeat, as for Assange, the Espionage Act was not written to prosecute just holding that stuff just because somebody is stamped classified on it, and should not be used.
I don't understand why. Look, I'm a taxpayer. I don't pay a lot of taxes because I don't make a lot of money. But the public has a right to know all of this stuff. I said before, if they want to put Julian Assange out of work, stop committing crimes. And one of the crimes out there, stop committing war crimes, stop torturing people. And you know what? He won't have a job. You'll put WikiLeaks out of work if you stop the corruption and everything else that the U.S. government doesn't want us to know. I'm going to say, I want to ask you now, Stefania, since we got 10 minutes left, and I think you have some questions for Mr. Ellsberg, and so go right ahead.
Yes, absolutely. Daniela, I want to ask why you think all those abuses stopped your case, made your case collapse, whereas in the case of Julian Assange, they didn't. Why? Because they tried to kill him despite they did all sorts of abuses which you experienced, and in your case, the case collapsed. In his case,
as I said, it was kind of miraculous. There are a lot of things that just were extremely unlikely to happen did combine to get me off in this case. But for example, that aren't applicable. One that comes to my mind, not necessarily the main one, is I was on trial at that point. I was in a courtroom. I had lawyers representing me. There were many reporters covering the trial and so forth. So when this information of the break-in to my former psychoanalyst office to get information, when Nixon tried to withhold that from getting to the prosecutors after John Dean revealed it to him on April 15th. And so he told the prosecutors, don't, the head of the criminal division and the attorney, don't send that to the court because it involved national security, he said. So they didn't. They knew it was their duty to send it to the court, which was in an ongoing trial at that time. Yeah. So after about 2 weeks, the acting attorney general, Kleindienst, and the head of the criminal division, Peterson, went to Nixon and said, we'll have to resign if you don't send this because we are in a position of obstructing justice. So he said, okay, go along and send it. So there we were in court. In other words, Julian is in that position where the administration virtually has to acknowledge this and address it. See, just sitting there. In our case, when that came out in the court, the reporters just all left the courtroom, dashed for the phones. Watergate has met the Pentagon Papers case. They'd had a very boring trial up to this time. And all of a sudden, it was front page, the thing. They told all that. And and for days after that, we had one revelation after another of criminal activities because they brought Howard Hunt back to the grand jury and he'd committed perjury earlier and asked him about all the other crimes. So that was an exciting time. But Julian, I remember, had a judge who just didn't take account of this in the extradition hearing. But in part, she may have felt justified in that because she ruled against the extradition, without this. And but it was the higher court who said no, and they did not address the court that addressed her rejection of extradition and allowed extradition. The court did not hear anything about these crimes. So that's one of the things. That's one of the things his lawyers is appealing on right now, and rightly so. And it may work for him eventually. But on the other side of this, remember the torture program that Chelsea Manning and Julian Assange revealed that was in part going on in Iraq. She revealed that as late as Obama, we were still turning people over to the Iraqis knowing they would be tortured. Yes. That meant that Obama, in front of the International Court of Justice, whose jurisdiction we still reject, but if he were in front of that, Obama would be responsible for tremendous international crime here, as great as if we were torturing them ourselves. Now, one person in this whole torture program connected with it, one person has gone to prison. And that was the whistleblower, John Kiriakou, who revealed the name of a torturer. And for that, he spent years in prison. The only one. Looking back, I'm thinking of all the crimes that were committed in Vietnam. And by the way, let me say this. I mentioned earlier the charges of Russian crimes in this war of aggression against civilians. Very easy for me to believe. Why? Because in our aggression in Iraq or in Vietnam, we committed crimes like that every day. So it drives me slightly crazy when I hear our officials saying, wow, war crimes, take it to the International Court. This is really terrible. Well, that would be fine, except these are American officials who are saying this and talking rightly about Russian aggression. America, the one that invaded Iraq, is the greatest aggression in this century so far. The prior to Ukraine, certainly, the war I was involved in. It's not that I don't want those crimes addressed. On the contrary, I do, and I would.
What about the drones?
But for the U.S. to have forgotten that what we're charging them with, for example, I'll give one example. They mentioned white phosphorus being used, which is not specifically a war crime. It should be banned, but it isn't clearly, because is it a smoke thing? Is it a just for covering smoke? Or is it for terrible injuries to civilians, which I have seen in Vietnam? It's a substance that burns through to the bone. So it makes a peculiar kind of scarring, unlike napalm, which doesn't burn through to the bone. Different kind of scarring. I've seen both of them. And yes, they should be criminal. They should be banned. For us to mention white phosphorus, we don't even, which we don't even ban, and which we use enormously in Vietnam. I've seen it. If we suddenly say we've awakened to how horrible this stuff is, yes, we should have banned it in the past. We should have criminalized it and so forth. But for us to be talking about this now means that all our own use of this stuff has all gone down the memory hole. It's total amnesia. The United States of Amnesia, was it that Gore Vidal called it?
Yes.
Anyway, here, as I say, I'm going on.
Well, it's okay. I know you have a follow-up there, Stefania.
What's that?
He mentioned United States of Amnesia, quoting Gore Vidal.
Yeah.
I want to close this interview telling you a story. When he was arrested, Julian was carrying a book about an interview with Gore Vidal. I had given him that book as a present because Gore Vidal was living in Italy and the beautiful Amalfi Coast. So that I gave him that book as a present, and I gave him some lemons from the Amalfi Coast, and we were joking about poisoned lemon because we were joking about the risk that they could poison his food inside the embassy. But then we discovered that the CIA had really planned to kill him. So it was it was not a joke. It was a reality. Even the worst scenario was true in his case. They planned to kill him. They planned to poison him. They planned to leave the door open and to allow kidnapping him. So we, even the thing we thought we were paranoid were real, were real. Even the worst scenario were all real things. So, I mean, when I look back in those years where we were joking about poisoned food and things like that, I think we were, we trusted democracy too much. We thought we could do it. We could do it safely, and yet we could not. He's in prison. He risks dying in prison. So we have to think about how our democracy is not really a democracy at all. We have to look how this case exposed that we are not in a democracy. We are not allowed to reveal the state criminality at the highest level. And if you do it, they kill you. They try to kill you. They try to put in prison for life. This is the reality. And this is why the media, the mainstream doesn't cover, the mainstream don't cover it, because they don't want to show the ugly face, the real face, the actual face of our democracies. And we want to go ahead with the propaganda that we are free, we are safe, we can expose state criminality at the highest level, but this case provide evidence that we cannot, you know.
Can I make one caution, agreeing with nearly all you're saying, Stefania, but I get uneasy, and I want to cautious when I hear people, not only you by any means, saying, we're not a democracy. We are a fascist state. We are a police state. It's here. It's happened, because it can get a lot worse. And in fact, we're on the process. We're on the track of it's getting a lot worse. And let me put this. If Donald Trump is elected, really elected this time, actually in 2024, it will get a lot worse. I have no doubt at all that he is a domestic enemy of democracy. And the notion, Ed Snowden has called us a turnkey tyranny, meaning that you could sort of turn a dial, and tomorrow we'd be like East Germany, the East German Democratic Republic, supposedly, or like Mussolini's fascism, or like, in other words, in Italy, you can look at Berlusconi, and he's, as I just saw in your book is very good, by the way, on revealing the content of what Julian Assange revealed. Rarely done, really. It's very good for them, and many other things. Terrific book.
Secret power.
So he reveals, Berlusconi, how the help his government gave, if I'm not getting the
regime, yes, absolutely,
to the freedom of the kidnappers, the CIA kidnappers in Italy, who kidnapped a person, as you say, in broad daylight, and a thing. And Berlusconi government assisted ours in protecting them from any prosecution in Italy or elsewhere. But you think it can't get worse than Berlusconi? Or Berlusconi couldn't be any worse if he got back? No, it can get a lot worse, and that's what's at stake here. To keep it in many ways, to reverse the track we are on in climate, of course, was the number one problem. In nuclear weapons, we've got to reverse course in that. And the threats that Putin is making of this becoming a nuclear war by Soviet action are outrageous, like ours for the last 70 years. We have used those threats and are using them right now, and will use them in Taiwan. They should be recognized as outrageous and unacceptable by anyone, whether it's the U.S. and Britain and France, or Russia, or Putin, or anybody else. So, yes, we have to apply these things equally, and you were certainly right. You were right. And Assange, to show how far we are from the democracy we think we have.
Yes.
And the track we're on. But I think it's not entirely helpful to say it's gotten as bad as it can get. No. We have we have to fight about is it's getting a lot worse than it is.
The name of that book is The Doomsday. Let me say the name of the book. I recommend people read this book, The Doomsday Machine, which is very relevant right now. And of course, Secrets, your book Secrets, and Stefania Maurizi, we're alluding to her book Secret Power, WikiLeaks and Its Enemies. It'll be coming out in English very soon. It's already out in Italian. If you read Italian, get that book now. And Daniel has already read
by the way, I doubt if Stefania really disagrees with what I said. Tell me if I'm wrong, Stefania. I was, in a way, editing your wording in a way here, but I doubt if you disagree with me.
It can get worse.
No, I completely agree, Daniel. I completely agree with you. Absolutely.
Right. All right. So we're getting late here. I just want to. I want to get back to Julian here. I want closing remarks, and what's the solution Yeah, I don't know what I can do. A radio show, I can do a podcast, I can do special events, I can do vigils, and I can go out with a billboard truck. And nothing seems to be working. Where do we go from here? How do we stop it? I'll go to you first, Stefania, and Daniel, you'll get the last word. Stefania.
Well, I don't believe that we have to hope for the British law to save him. He has no chances with the British law. Maybe he has chances at the European Court of Human Rights. But don't forget that when Sweden was trying to extradite him, I obtained documents thanks to my freedom of information litigation. I obtained documents providing evidence that Sweden was talking to Britain in order to extradite him before he could get protective measures from the European Court of Human Rights. So they could try to do this with the US extradition as well. They could try to extradite him before he get a protective measure from the European Court of Human Rights. So I have no trust in the law. I have no trust in the British courts. I have no trust in the legal process because they have used the legal process to destroy him. So I have no trust whatsoever. The only trust, the only hope I have is the public pressure. I believe the public pressure is the only, and indeed, the Argentinian Nobel Prize, Peace Nobel Prize, Esquivel, has promoted an appeal. Because when he was in Argentina under the regime, he was arrested and tortured, and he saved his life only thanks to the public pressure. So he made an appeal and asked everyone to put pressure, to take to the streets, to make appeal, to make protests, sit-in, all sorts of political pressure and public pressure. And he invited everyone to record, to film some videos, speaking out for him. I believe this is the only thing we can do to make the UK authorities to understand how unpopular an extradition would be. Because if he gets extradited, he's gone. He can win this battle, I believe, in Europe. So he has not to be extradited. And in order not to extradite him, we have to put pressure, we have to protest, we have to take to the street, we have to mobilize the media, we have to do this. I believe this is the only chance. Daniel, what do you think?
Yes. You get the last word, Daniel.
Yeah. Chelsea Manning was in isolation. I was just reading in your book, Stefania, rereading that it was only public pressure that got her out of solitary confinement at Quantico, the Marine barracks where she was being held. And something that people wouldn't, in this case, in both Chelsea's case and Assange, I think, have brought people's attention to some degree, not as much as needed, to the fact that prolonged solitary confinement is torture, that it is cruel, inhumane treatment.
Yes.
And two rapporteurs for that subject to the UN, including Niels Melzer and an earlier one, have all concluded that the solitary confinement that Chelsea was subject to and that Assange has been subject to for a long time is cruel, inhumane treatment. And of course that occurs in this country, routinely, very prolonged solitary confinement. And people weren't paying attention to it until, a lot of it is black prisoners are particularly, they've been years in solitary confinement, years. And so that needs to be changed. Public pressure did get her out of that. I think in your book, I don't know whether to mention this or not, but as you know, she was forced. She was on suicide watch at some point, so they forced her to be naked, so she couldn't use strips of clothing or something to hang herself. Well, she was at that time, remember, Bradley Manning. And to be naked in front of these people, remember she had said to her, the person who informed on her, Adrienne Lambo, that something that impressed me. She said, I would rather, there's two parts to it. I would rather be, she was willing to be in prison for life for what she was doing, or even be executed, she said. And then she said something that at that time would have been incomprehensible to people. Rather than to have my picture posted all over the world as a boy, which did happen. Well, now, what did that mean? She was trans. She was a woman, but to be exposed, that was the worst thing she could imagine. And yet, it's what she not only risked, she did suffer it, and she lived through it. And but in the end, as I say, public pressure at least got her out of solitary confinement.
Yes.
I don't have, as you say, the judicial system subject to politics here now, great power politics, has failed. The system it's failed Julian at every step of the way.
Yes.
He took on the most powerful empire in the world, one of the empires in the world. And so far, they've got him. He's suffering for it. I have very little doubt that even better than extradition, which would end up with a trial, for in the minds of the administration, Trump and now Biden, is for him to die in jail. I think they would rather have him die in jail or be there indefinitely, rather than the second best would be to have him on trial, where even he couldn't tell the jury what he had done, but some way or other there would be a focus in the press about what he had exposed and what he had done. I don't think they want that. They're trying to get it, in part, but the best thing would be from stay in Britain indefinitely in solitary or die there. And, when the special prosecutor was asked, when he learned the crimes against me, and he said their orders were to incapacitate you totally. That was not for Kunstler, as far as I know, but for me, they wanted quiet. I was revealing that they had been threatening nuclear weapons against North Vietnam for a couple of years at that point. They wanted me dead. So when he told me that, I said, what does that mean? Kill me? What? Incapacitate me totally? He said, well, the words were to incapacitate you totally. But remember, these guys, who all were assets of the CIA, had been, and one of them was active asset at that time, never use the word kill. They say neutralize with extreme prejudice. A great one. Just neutralize in general. Get rid of, or whatever. Hillary Clinton, they don't say kill, but he had no doubt they meant to kill me. Hillary Clinton said of Ed Snowden, why don't we can't we just drone him?
Yep.
Well, droning, of course, is what Daniel Hale revealed. And droning is the murder that Barack Obama committed against Anwar al-Awlaki.
Yes.
He was preaching jihad. He was using words that probably would pass the First Amendment in this country, but without indictment, trial, prosecution, anything else, Obama ordered his death by drone. And then weeks later, his 16-year-old son, looking for his father, was droned for reasons that have never been revealed, really.
Yep.
That again on the direct order of Barack Obama, maybe somebody else was driving in the car with him, we don't know. But we have come to a point where presidents of the United States, managers of the empire, feel righteous and justified in killing even American citizens.
Yes.
It's just triumph. And Julian isn't even an American citizen, but he's an Australian citizen. So coming back to your question, Randy, I think the people in Australia who are demanding that their government at last speak up, it's a new government, a much less right-wing government than they had just a year ago, that should try to do what they can. I think that's a relatively hopeful approach. And in this country, finally, I'll say, our media, which has generally just ignored the case,
yes,
and did not cover the Chelsea Manning trial, to speak of, did not cover the Assange extradition hearings in London. Most of the U.S. press just ignored it,
yes,
not realizing that that puts a bullseye on the back of every journalist in the world, and specifically every journalist in America, when it comes to reporting stuff that has been stamped classified by anybody. If somebody leaked, having decided that the public needed to know, deserved to know, and it wouldn't harm our security, leaked the contents of what Donald Trump has been holding marked top secret or sensitive compartmented information, that person should not be tried under the Espionage Act. Should not, if they leaked it. Now, the jury might not agree that it deserved to be revealed, but at least they should have a chance to argue that. And I have little doubt that some of what he's holding can be revealed to the public without harm, despite its marking. Why do I assume that? Because that's true of the overwhelming amount of information that is marked secret or top secret or even sensitive compartment. The presumption is not that it really endangers the public. That's a wrong presumption. It's mistaken, in which most of the public shares. And naturally, people who want to see Donald Trump kept from office ever again or want to see him in prison, of whom I am a charter member, they honestly don't want to, question the question of whether this particular case is a good legal case or not. I understand that. But the media should understand. For example, I would like to see the media be aware of what I've just said. But
we're going to make sure that
the fact that it's top secret doesn't mean that it endangers the public. If it's sent out, he may just have wanted a souvenir. His wonderful love letters that he's gotten from Kim in North Korea. Would they endanger the public if they got out? Probably not. He just wanted, they're highly classified. He just wanted these love letters to look over at night, his bedside reading. I don't know. But I would like to see this be a teachable moment. I doubt if it will be. For people to say, without saying anything in favor of Trump, the fact that he has papers marked top secret does not mean that in the United States of America, with the First Amendment, he has in fact committed a crime. It doesn't. It shouldn't. Anyway, that would be nice if they said that. I kind of doubt it, but it will happen.
Well, I got to tell you something. This has been one of the most fascinating. An hour and 40 minutes went by like it was 1 minute. I could go on forever, but I have 2 shows now. So I got this week and next week covered. Daniel Ellsberg, Stefania Maurizi, thank you for this fascinating. Before I go, because I want you to stick around, I'm going to play our outgoing music here for everybody else out there. I want you to stick around. This is something very special. I have Marlene Dietrich singing Pete Seeger's Where Have All the Flowers Gone? This is from 1962. Stick around because I want Kelly to say goodbye to you as well. Thank you so much to both of you. I love you both so much.
Good to see you, Stefania. I hope that post-COVID days we'll get a chance to.
All right. Don't go anywhere, though. I want you to watch this, and I'll say goodbye because this is the concluding music. Just stick around for 3 minutes, would you please? Okay? Goodbye, everybody.
Where have all the flowers gone? Long time passing. Where have all the flowers gone? Long time ago. Where have all the flowers gone? Young girls pick them, everyone. When will they ever learn? When will they ever learn? Where have all the young girls gone? Long time passing. Where have all the young girls gone? Long time ago. Where have all the young girls gone? Gone to young men, everyone. When will they ever learn? When will they ever learn? Where have all the young men gone? Long time passing. Where have all the young men gone? Long time ago. Where have all the young men gone? Gone to soldier, everyone. When will they ever learn? When will they ever learn? Where have all the soldiers gone? Long time passing. Where have all the soldiers gone? Long time ago. Where have all the soldiers gone? Gone to graveyards, everyone. When will they ever learn? When will they ever learn? Where have all the graveyards gone? Long time passing. Where have all the graveyards gone? Long time ago. Where have all the graveyards gone? Gone to flower, everyone. When will they ever learn? When will they ever learn? Where have all the flowers gone? Long time passing. Where have all the flowers gone? Long time ago. Where have all the flowers gone? Young girls pick them, everyone. When will they ever learn? When will they ever learn?